Hey artists, so for the purpose of this demo, what I want to show you is how to use a contour. So in the slide, it kind of talked about a contour line being that which travels along the exterior of an object, and then it only traces the important details inside of whatever object that is. Our object is going to be our hand. So what I've asked you to kind of think about is what gesture you want to focus on. I'm going to focus on a basic wave, and I'm going to be honest, I would suggest that for any of you that this assignment kind of stresses you out instantly. I would do a basic wave because it's easier to capture the details. It's way easier to do the contour trace, and then it's easier to identify the shapes inside of it. But you can follow along with me during this, or you can just watch and kind of see how it unfolds. I'm going to use a pencil, and I'm drawing on a standard sheet of paper, so just a white piece of paper that's 8.5 by 11, okay? I am sorry about the angle of view because you can't see my wrist, but I'll show you what it looks like after I'm all done, okay? So I'm going to start at the very edge of the paper, and then what you're seeing now is as I'm tracing alongside my hand. What I want you to be cautious of is young artists. I've seen more students, they draw into their hand or they draw around their hand, but they don't keep their pencil flat up against their hand. If you draw into your hand, you end up looking like you have skeleton fingers. And if you draw around your hand, you end up looking like you're wearing one of Mario's gloves. So you have these really marshmallow hands. So if you can keep your pencil straight up and down and trace around to work in a contour drawing, you're going to end up with a basic turkey drawing that we've been doing since we were in kindergarten. What I want you to do, working observation assist, so we have a basic contour. What we need to build up now are those interior lines that make this a complex object or form, okay? It's going to take it from a 2D shape to more of a 3D form, okay? So I'm going to keep my hand where I can see it. I'm going to move it slightly off the page, and then I'm going to start to focus on details from my thumb and place it in here, okay? And what I'm going to do for you, I'm going to just do hard lines where I see there's evidence of an important interior line that I don't want to neglect, okay? So I'm going to go from those soft implied lines that I use to draw out my hand to hard lines that make up the actual shape of my hand, okay? So now what you're going to start to see is that as I press a little harder, I'm starting to decide which lifelines that are inside of my hand or which wrinkles are inside of my hands, the puckers that make up the palm of my hand. I'm going to start to give them some attention, okay? And then I'm going to just start, I'm not going to overwhelm the space with a bunch of hands, or with a bunch of lines rather, but I am going to try and capture some of the most important details. If you put too many lines in, you tend to make your hands look a little old, and your hands are still very youthful. Mine might look a little bit more mature or older than yours. But see, all I'm going to continue to do is add in those hard lines where I see there's an important interior line like a nail or a knuckle that I need to add in. And then I'll try and add in some of my other knuckle lines, okay? As I'm working though, I want you to see that I am keeping that hand out. Your nail beds are not rectangular. They have more of a curve to them. They build off your finger. They may build off your finger rather, because some of you keep your nails really short, which is fine. So I'm going to add in a nail there, and then your hand naturally tells you where there's knuckle lines. You'll see indents in your hand where there's a knuckle, or parts of your bones that stick out, protrusions, where you know that those knuckles are going to go really naturally, okay? Now, I don't need a hard line that completely dissects my finger in half. but I do need to look for some lines that would indicate that there's skin, you know, there's flesh. So you'll notice that I tried some cross hatching and I just tried some implied lines that break up the space. And then I'm going to move down. So here's 2 indented lines. So I know that knuckle goes there. And then here are 2 protruding lines. So I know that that knuckle goes in between there. So now I'm going to go through and I'm going to figure out, like, there's kind of an implied line for the knuckle there. There's a line that goes underneath there. And I'm not going to worry about capturing everything, but what I want you to start to pay attention to is that I'm putting in enough implied or hard lines to kind of point out what I'm looking at, okay? And then I might trace around those shapes now that I'm feeling a little bit better about it and add in some hard lines. So now I'm feeling pretty good about this as a shape. Okay, so then I did soft lines to hard lines. Now I'm just going to work around. Keep your hand out so that you can kind of see where everything's at. My nails are just barely above those, barely above my fingers. So when I draw them in, I'm just going to make sure I add the curve of my nail, and maybe I add in a little detail that shows that there's a nail bed there. And then there's no cuticle or no white mark in this one, so I'm going to leave it bare. And then I'm going to start going through just like I did before. I find the 2 indents, the 2 protrusions, and so I know that a knuckle goes here and a knuckle goes there. And then I'm going to start adding in the implied lines that help build up the form so that I know that that's where that knuckle is, okay? And just give it enough detail. You'll notice that your marks on your knuckles are going to be different than the ones on mine. We use our hands differently as a drawer, and then just even with age, mine have different wrinkles that occur, okay? So then once you have a nail and you're starting to build up your knuckles, then you can go through, because you'll have sufficient information on that form to turn those soft lines into hard lines, okay? And when I'm keeping my hand out where I can see what I'm working with, okay? And you can start to extend down lines that you see in there. You can start to do some overlap, okay? So I'm going to move my hand slightly off my paper so that you can see what I'm drawing in. Now this nail sets below my finger. It still has a curve like my others because I shape my nails, and then there's a slight bow to it, and I bring it back down. But none of those lines are straight. I mean, you might have kind of a straight line across the top, but chances are with the angle that you're looking at, it won't be straight when you need to go to draw it, okay? So look at where your nail rests inside of your finger. Mine's inside, it does not extend above with this one. I still have a small nail growing, so I can go in and add that information. If you wanted to and you see lines inside of your nails like I do, I could add some of those implied lines to let people know that my nail has a form as well, but it's up to you. Some people say it looks more like a shell and they don't like that look. Right now I'm not in love with it, so I'm going to go ahead and erase it, okay? But I am going to continue through and add in my knuckles. Remember, find your indents, find your protrusions so that you know that that's where a knuckle goes, and then look for those implied lines that build up the form. And they might not be the same on each knuckle, okay? So what I'm trying to get at is that we have a tendency as young artists to want to rush through, and we want to create generalizations, which just means that each one of these would be the same, but you use your fingers in different ways. So you're going to have different knuckle lines. You're going to have different creases that show up more predominantly on other hands. So as you're looking at your knuckle, find a few that you that really stick out to you and put those down, okay? Then look at your exterior part now, and now that I'm more settled with the information I put inside, I'm going to go ahead and turn those soft lines to hard lines. And then as I'm looking at this, I will see if I want to add in any more information like into the palm of my hand. And it looks like there's a crease in there right in here that I need to put into here, okay? So now I'm onto my pinky, and my pinky is the same. Like there's a little bit flesh above my nail. So when I put it in there, I'm going to make sure I put in the curved portion of my pinky nail. And it goes almost to the full sides of that finger. And then look for your edges again. You know, they draw down towards the narrow part of your fingernail, so they kind of curve in. And then you know that indents indicate a knuckle and protrusions indicate a knuckle. So then I've got one here, and my pinky's really thin. There are not as many identifiable lines in it. So this one is going to be a little bit simpler. And then I think I'm satisfied with those marks. So now I'm just going to look and add in the nail, the little bit of a nail that's growing in there. And then take my hard lines into soft. What I noticed as I was drawing, when I traced the contour of my hand, I kind of made some real bulbous marks. So as I turn those soft lines into hard lines, I'm probably going to go ahead and erase it because I don't need it anymore. And then I'm going to trace around that. My skin's pulled a little tight when I did the wave, so I'm going to put a little implied line in there for tension. And then I'm just going to trace around the edge to make in the fingers, okay? So as I'm working, I'm going from, apologize for the shaking camera, I'm going to work from soft lines to hard lines, and I'm going to work in these areas to see what other minor details I could probably add before I add on any color or shading.